Last week, I designed this sled. But it so happens with all designs, eventually they need to be made. I started the aluminum frame in my father-in-law's basement, working off of the designs that I had come up with. For the horizontal cross members, I would use a 1" by 1" aluminum box tube. I know in the past you guys have given me a hard time for using the hacksaw, and honestly now I have an angle grinder, but I still prefer the hacksaw because it's a lot more accurate. And accuracy is important because I have to file everything down, and that just saves some time. The control arms for the suspension were made out of a 1½ by 1" box tube. So I cut these things to length, cleaned up the ends, and then drilled the holes in the end where they would mount to the frame as well as to the shock. Then came the tricky part. See, I wanted the control arm to be a U-channel, but they didn't make any U-channel in the size I wanted. So I had to cut the top off of the box to make a 3/4 inch deep U-channel. Once again, the hacksaw worked really well for this long cut, but you really had to flip it around and then keep going until you got the whole way down. And of course, when I got to the end and separated it, I had a lot of filing to do. When you're working with metal, a file is almost your best friend, especially with aluminum. Here's a little trick I learned for finding the center of anything. Set your square along a 1" line, and then you can easily measure off of that when you have it up against the box tube. For the large box tube down the center of the frame, I ended up drilling a 1/2 inch hole through the one end of it. This would serve for the steering pin. As I often do, I drilled the holes with a small bit before I did the large bit, just so that I could be a little more accurate if I was off on the first pass. Another tricky part was drilling the square holes in the sides of the center bar. I ended up drilling 2 holes in each one and then just connecting them with the jigsaw to make a relatively square hole before I filed it out square. Once again, the holes were endless on this, but I finally had the pieces I need and we headed off to my parents to finish it. This is the shop I grew up working in, and honestly, I love working there. It may not be the most well-equipped shop, but it's definitely home. One thing I really loved with this project was that I was working off of a very well-defined plan. I knew exactly what holes to drill and where to drill them and exactly what cuts to make, and everything fit together perfectly. Once the crossbars and the main bar was ready, I began sliding everything into place. Then I measured to make sure everything was equal side to side, and used a square to hold the crossbar in place as I drilled the mounting holes. I used stainless steel bolts for everything on this build. The main reason for that was just, we're going to be in snow, and it just keeps everything from rusting and keeps it looking a little bit nicer. The shocks were a little too wide, so I fired up the grinder and ground off that pin. They were also a little too long, but that's easily fixed. I made sure to remove all the sharp edges. I didn't want to be going down the hill and wreck or touch the sled and have it cut me. The shoes for mounting the skis to the sled were made from some old fence posts that my father-in-law gave me. I did use the metal cutting bandsaw when I was confident that it would give me a nice cut, but oftentimes I would just finish things up with a hacksaw because it was just as quick and it was a ton more accurate. For mounting the suspension components together, I used shoulder screws. These were nice because you can tighten them down nice and tight without worrying about locking up your suspension. So I applied a little grease and slid everything together. Depending on the connection, you had to put a bunch of washers in between the different parts. This was just a matter of stacking up the washers until everything fit right, and then tightening it all down. And that's how I made the aluminum frame for my sled. Next week, we're gonna be finishing up the sled, and then the week after that, I'm gonna be testing it out on some pretty long, gnarly hills. You don't wanna miss that. So if you don't wanna miss anything, you might wanna hit the subscribe button if you haven't, as well as the little bell icon button. It's a new thing YouTube has that basically you have to sign up to be notified when videos come out. So if you do that, that's great. And then you see the videos, and that helps both of us out. Well, I will see you guys next week, and that's it.